You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Welcome back, everyone, to episode 29 of Arsenal Pass. I'm Brendan Patrick, joined always by Calling champion Hayden Dale. Hayden, how are you doing?
I'm good, Brendan. What's happening?
So today we'll be doing a little recap of the Calling Cincinnati before we get into the main topic of the pod, which is actually going to be breaking down the classic constructed meta heading into the national season. We're going to be looking at the data from the most recent ProQuest, both at Dallas and Cincinnati, as well as giving our personal opinions on what decks we think are under or overrated. But anyway, Hayden, how's your week in Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, it's been good. Back in store, I think I said the other week as well. So played a third week of armories. Well, just one armory, but a third armory in 3 weeks, which is nice to be back in stores and playing. And just playing a bit of classic constructed. And that's kind of been it, other than testing this week. But it's been a nice week. How about yourself? Obviously coming back from Cincy.
Yep, did the Calling Cincinnati. It's a really good experience. I really enjoyed it. I'd never been to Cincinnati before. The weather was awesome. Some people probably thought the weather sucked, but that kind of overcast, 50 degrees, hoodie weather is definitely my favorite. So got to hang out with friends, have a good time. We'll get into it a little bit more. Didn't do as well as I would want to in the main event, but that's kind of how sealed goes sometimes. But ultimately had a almost successful day on Sunday.
yeah, and a fun weekend, right? Which is the main thing. Hey, the game was the winner on the day.
Yeah, I'm just here for fun.
Anyway, should we move through into the news?
Yeah, let's crack on to the news.
So first item on the news, something that really exciting that was announced at the Calling Cincinnati on coverage actually, was that we're about to get a supplemental set very, very soon. We don't know too many details other than previews are going to start next weekend is what it looks like. So that sounds like we're going to get a preview at Orlando at US Nationals at the Calling by the sounds of it. So very likely that could happen, on coverage or so definitely worth staying tuned to. And then I would, other than that, I would guess that we're probably going to get the set by the end of month / December. Usually it's a 2-week preview window, right? So although it could be, I guess more information dropped at Orlando, and then we get the preview season after that. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. But any sort of insights from your side or any more knowledge about what the supplemental set might be? Crew 2, as some are dubbing it.
Yeah, so it has cards for every single class in the game, which is interesting. Something I didn't know would happen. And other than that, I just want to kind of emphasize to any newer players or people that just people that are maybe more limited players, which I would consider myself to be. These supplemental sets are actually the best sets in Flesh and Blood. I didn't think that before. I was like, Crucible, supplemental sets, like, meh. But if you look back at Crucible, it's incredible, the design, and how much it just kind of changes the meta and just opens up classes to do multiple things. So I think after kind of being engrossed in Flesh and Blood for these past couple of years, nothing gets me more excited now than a supplemental set, so I am pumped.
Yeah, well, like Crucible was such an awesome set. Like I think you've said this as well. I've said this. Like when it first came out, there were some things where it was like, yeah, these are cool. Some things less so. But as it's gone along, like every card has been really interesting in some way, shape, or form. There's some cards that really haven't seen play and et cetera, et cetera. But there's big chunks that have started to come in and see play. And these cards that as we've gone through with Monarch and now with Tales of Aria, you look at these cards from Crucible and you go, like, these had a design purpose already in Crucible for future sets. Like they slot in so well, or they complement some of these cards from Monarch and Tales even, as well as Welcome to Wraith and Arcane Rising so well. And that's such a cool design, I think, to see.
Yeah, 100%.
So no doubt we'll see, no doubt we'll see cards from the set that'll hark back to even, Welcome to Wraith cards, or, have really cool interactions, things like that. So yeah, I'm excited to see what we get. I think it's always going to shake up constructed.
Yeah, just please beef up my wizard, please.
It's all Brendan wants for Christmas, literally.
for years now. I've been getting coal the past few Christmases.
Moving on, obviously Cincinnati was this last weekend, and a big congratulations to Michael Fing, who won the event on the main event. Really strong top 8 showing there from I guess, just a strong top 8 in general. I was checking a bit of coverage out. Didn't get to see the whole event as I had with Dallas the weekend before. But yeah, that's up on Fab TCG. So I actually went back, watched a couple of matches in some spare time this week. And you can do the same. You can go and see some matches. Brennan, you got a feature match on camera again this week?
You never guess the result. Yeah, it's a funny little thing. Because I don't get any extra nervous or anything like that. I don't misplay particularly. There was one misplay I did back in Dallas. It was just an inferior line. But other than that, like my first 3 games on stream, I hate to be that guy, but I did get a little bit unlucky. First time was triple invert. Next time was triple sigil. And after that was, oh man, that quarterfinal sequence was hilarious. But yeah, this time I just kind of lost into this just your standard game of sealed. Looking back at the game, I genuinely don't think there was any other lines I could have possibly taken. And my opponent had actually kind of missed a beneficial trigger at the time. So if that happened in real life, I would have just kind of lost like a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it would have changed the outcome of the game. So yeah, in retrospect, don't think there was much I could have done. But yeah, 0-4 on stream, not very good.
It's all right. We have to pick it up next weekend in Orlando. But yeah, as I say, Fab TCG, if you do want to check out the coverage, their YouTube page has it all already uploaded. They do it the same night, which is pretty cool. Anyway, Brendan, moving on.
Yep. So I just want to shout out the Arsenal Pass YouTube. We recently had a gameplay go up. It was Bravo versus Viserai, one of my favorite gameplays that we've done. There is a nice Easter egg in that video for those of you that want to pay extra close attention or just look at the comments and see all the memes. But yeah, it was a great gameplay video, and I think that it's a cool one to watch. And keep an eye out for the Viserai deck list that's coming out this week. So very excited about that. It's going to look a little different from the one in the video, but still very spicy and very competitive. So last week's time of the round as well was with the old Sasha Markovic, the 2-time calling champion, now turned washed up, retired man that who knows what he does. But yeah, we had him on. Great chat, good banter. Recommend you check it out. And I just want to remind you that time of the round is now on all podcast platforms. It is a bit delayed by about 3 days. So, but if you like to listen to the car, just wherever you like to listen, it is now very available to you. And segueing from that, this week we do have Tannen Grace, the orator of Flesh and Blood. So one of the main casters we've had throughout Vegas, Dallas, and Cincinnati. We had him on, gave him a little bit of crap for always coming second in SCG Opens. And of course, just had a great conversation, talked a little bit about baseball at the end, which he's a tiny bit of a fan of.
Just a little bit of a fan, yeah. No, it was awesome to have Tannen on. I have obviously not had any interaction with Tannen, being on the side of the world and not being in any of the callings, but a really cool guy and super awesome to have on, and really interesting to hear a bit about him and what he thinks about the game. I think, you know what, one of my favorite things about Time in the Round is that we don't know some of the people like Sasha, obviously we know really well, but we've had people on that we don't know that well. We might know as acquaintances, and just hearing just how they came across the game or what they actually truly think of Flesh and Blood and what their plans are in Flesh and Blood is hugely exciting, because a lot of these players have come from massive TCG backgrounds, and Flesh and Blood has hooked them so much that a lot of them who I would have thought Flesh and Blood is something that's of an interest to them, they would call their main game now, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, I do want to shout out the Arsenal Pass Patreon. So we are at almost 300 patrons, which is incredible. I mean, the support there has just been more than we ever could have imagined. And it's allowing us to take Arsenal Pass to, bigger and better and newer heights every single month here. So really excited. If you aren't aware, we do have tons of exclusive content on the Arsenal Pass Patreon. So, like I said, there's going to be a deck tech, Viserai deck tech on the Arsenal Pass YouTube in the upcoming week. But if you want to get a little bit, go a little bit deeper on that deck tech, on the Patreon, there's going to be a full written guide that includes sideboards, what cards to bring in, what cards to bring out, as well as, guides on each matchup. And of course, for those of you interested in math, we have the ratios, the spreadsheets, all that fun stuff. And along with that, we do have, extra pods each month, as well as live sessions as well. So thank you so much to all of our patrons. And we hope we can keep just providing awesome content on there.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. So Hayden, anyway, take us to the Command and Cookout.
Let's do it. Yeah, if you want to get your questions in for the Command and Cookout, of course, this is our weekly submitted question section, correspondence section, where we answer listener questions. So, get those in. You can either email us to arsenalpassfab@gmail.com, FAB in Fab. You can tweet at us if you want, or you can even drop a question in the YouTube below and just shout out those for the Command and Cookout. But yeah, the question this week comes from Samajama, who asks, how do we go about deciding how many cards should be in play in the deck? So, like 60, 63, 67. Like 60, is that the best for consistency and ratio? But sometimes you can go more. How do you decide on that? And they say, thanks always. You're all the best.
Well, Hayden, Mr. Ratio Man over here.
You're going to point at me first. Yeah, look, I think my default setting is always to play 60 cards. So I think that's a bit of a holdover. I think especially from playing other TCGs where you want the consistent. You want to be drawing your best cards every game, right? And in other TCGs, you might not see your whole deck. Whereas Flesh and Blood, you're a lot more likely to see your whole deck, especially in previous formats that were a bit slower, a bit more grindy. Second, third, even fourth cycles of decks was not uncommon. That's, to be honest, primarily Welcome to Wraith. And I think the Welcome to Wraith meta really shifted my thoughts on how you decide cards in a deck. I was often playing 65 card decks, 70 card decks. It wasn't that weird to do. I think as we've moved through into different formats, these formats have been faster. You're less likely to see second cycle in majority of your games. You still can in certain games. But I think probably what still stands out, and the reason that 60 is still, I think for the most part, the correct number to play, is consistency of your ratios of cards and seeing your best cards in any given game. So and I always use a Brood example, but if you've got 3 Blood Rush Bellows in your deck and you play 60 cards, well, as soon as you play 65 cards, you're less likely to see all 3 Blood Rush Bellows. There's the percentage of hands that have a Blood Rush Bellow in them are going to be lower, right? So that's probably where 60 cards comes in. And then I think moving from that, you start at the 60 card market, and then for me it becomes, okay, what are the reasons that I wouldn't play 60 cards? So, am I expecting to go into a fatigue matchup? Traditionally, Guardian versus Warrior or Guardian Mirrors, I would be not afraid to play more than 60 cards because those matchups can be quite grindy. I know I'm going to see the second cycle of my deck. There's risk of fatigue. That's probably where I'm looking at playing, to be honest, more than 60 cards. Maybe I'm playing a hero like a Ranger, and I'm playing into a bit more of a grinding matchup, and I'm a little bit worried because I don't have a weapon. That could be some fatigue issues. So that's where I'm looking at potentially playing, I guess, more than 60. And then the kind of the key consideration for me is, and Samajama asks about this, is what about consistency of ratios? Well, I'm traditionally going to be building my deck off of a 60 card ratio. So if I think that a third of my deck needs to be blues, for instance, well, I'm going to be building that off 60s, and it's very unlikely that unless I want to be changing resource cards in my deck because of defensive value or utility of those cards, that I'm going to have extra resources. There might be 1 or 2 for certain reasons, like maybe there's a timestamp potion for Prism or whatever it is. So if I start going above 60 cards, I'm going to start mucking with that ratio. So there's some decks where I just can never play above 60 cards, I think, or very rarely. But the chain deck that we played in the previous format, we had resource cards inside, but we had ways to go up to more cards for fatigue matchups and keep our ratios, keep our blood debt ratios, keep our blue ratios, keep our non-attack versus attack ratios. So I'm always looking at that from a base 60, and then I guess adapting that. I've just talked for a little bit there, Brendan, but that's kind of my view on it.
Yeah, so I think I completely agree with Hayden here, but if I can give you a heuristic...
Oh, here we go. His favorite thing.
I need a really, really good reason to play over 60 cards. That happens, but it has to be extremely conducive to the game plan. So in Chain, we would play 64, sometimes 67-ish, and that was into fatigue or playing a hedge board. I know, if your main game plan is going to be to fatigue, which some decks do, then yeah, you're probably going to be playing more than 60 cards. Other than that, usually your deck is more built around a few sets of very powerful cards, while the rest are, they supplement that game plan, but you want to be drawing your most powerful cards as consistently as possible. So yeah, 60 for me, unless I've got a very, very good reason not to.
Exactly. I think that's the main one, is your power cards and the consistency of your deck overall of those power cards to your resources to whatever else. The tighter you can keep that, the better. If there was a way I could play 40 cards in some matchups, that'd be amazing, right? I just type 20 of the cards that are weakest in that matchup, that kind of a bit of filler or serve very similar purposes, and then you just keep your explosive packages plus some of your resources and just go for it. but that's not the case.
Yeah, if you could play 20 cards in Kano, it'd probably be pretty good.
Thank you for the question, Samajama. And if anyone's got questions that they do want to submit, again, you can email us to arsenalpassfab@gmail.com, tweet at us, or drop us in the comments.
Sweet. All right, Hayden, take us on the main topic. Or, sorry, not the main topic. The pre-main topic, as it is.
Yeah, we will split this over two main topics today, I guess. And part one's going to be a bit of a recap of the Calling Cincinnati, which Brendan's going to deliver to us. And then we're going to jump into some classic constructed thoughts as we are on the eve of national championships kicking off this weekend. So, Cincinnati, Brendan, talk to me. Tell me about it. I guess just give us, last week we did a recap of Dallas, which we went a bit more in depth. I guess, and just trying to give an experience of what it's like to be at the Callings. Maybe just a little bit more of a top line overview this time, but just tell us about, your Friday, your Saturday, and your Sunday.
Yeah, sure. So Friday, didn't really play any flesh and blood, just taking it easy. I actually, man,
Get on later, right?
I don't know if this is I don't know if this. I did get in later, but I did on purpose. I don't know if this is a rumor or not, but they might change it so that some of the Friday events will contribute to like getting buys in the Saturday events like they used to in Magic. So there's an incentive for players to show up on Friday. Because currently there's no incentive for competitive players to show up on Friday unless you just like want to play games, right? So that would be really cool if they do that. But right now, like going forward, I'll probably be showing up late Fridays and just getting ready for the main event on Saturday. So early night Friday, just chilling. Saturday, right? Main event, more people there than Dallas. Didn't expect that. I don't know if anybody really expected that, but wasn't an incredible amount more, but it was like, slightly more, which is awesome. Like it's a huge success for the game. So let's talk about opening our seal pools. I opened mine. It's pretty cheeks, but I do open some good armor. I opened the Sutcliffe's boots. And then what else did I have? It was Plume, I think, Plume of the Evergrowth. So I had Sutcliffe's boots and Plume. And then I opened a pretty average to poo-poo Briar pool, but then opened a very good Lexi pool. But with the Lexi pool, I just would have had access to literally 0 armor. In classic Brendan fashion, I, of course, had 4 amulets, so getting really excited about always opening those amulets. So I had no armor, didn't have Honing Hood. Lexi maybe felt a little bit dangerous to play, so I decided to go with the Briar. I had decent non-attack actions, and it was just the attack actions that weren't great. So my deck, again, just needed to draw pretty well. Fortunately, it didn't. In round 1, I actually took a round 1 loss. So, for instance, like I had 3 embodiments at one time, and then I drew the full attack action hand. And actually had to pitch a Sigil of Suffering blue to plume back a So Tomorrow to block because my opponent was coming in for 9 off of like a 2-card hand. So that was a bit unlucky, and then I was doing pretty well in that round 1, but he had blocked with a Inspire Lightning red, and I ended up having to go down to 3. I mean, wouldn't play around the second one because it's hard for me to imagine someone playing 2, but he did play 2, and he got me for perfect lethal. I took another loss pretty soon. I think it was like in round 4. Again, just like kind of a brutal game. 5-2. I'm fine, and then I make it to the last round. Make it to the last round. It's, winning in. Obviously not looking great at 5-2 anyway, but you do get to at least draft. And then I always love when I sit across from my opponent, in some of these later rounds, it's like when they flip the full suite of armor and, they're in these late rounds, they got 2 losses, you're about to see some bologna sandwich. So he ended up doing a Bramble Spark Red fuse, Channel Mount Heroic, pitch the Earth card, then Entwine Lightning, fuse Lightning Surge. So that means Entwine Lightning comes in for 10 and 1 Arcane. So that's 11 damage, and then played the Lightning Surge after that because the embodiment of lightning. So 18 damage, pretty impossible to beat. So I kind of just got a little non-game there, and I was out at the old 5-3.
Would you say maybe that match gave you some inspiration?
It did give me some inspiration, maybe to put my face through a drywall. But other than that, no, it's all good. Just didn't make it. It's all good. It happens. Sealed is a crazy format. So, especially in Tales of Aria. But yeah, I wasn't too disappointed. I was just like, okay, whatever. We'll play the ProQuest tomorrow and just move on.
Well, let's move on.
Wow. Let's move on. So we ended up playing the ProQuest. I could have played Dash, which is kind of the deck that we've been working on, the ones we were planning to play, maybe in some other big events that are coming up. But ultimately, I wasn't too like excited about playing the ProQuest. Like I have 2 PTIs, and like the ProQuest is kind of a 10-hour event, and like it just didn't get me super excited to like be grinding through the whole thing. So I ended up playing just like a fun Briar deck, just like straight 60 cards. Like technically I had cards on the sideboard, but I just played straight to 60 the whole time. And then I ended up going 6-0. So just 6-0 my way through Swiss. Came into the top 8. Had a really clean semis match. Then played against the Chain. Clean quarters match. Played against Chain in the semis and unfortunately lost. Had a little bit of variance, and not even saying that one. Like that one's actually kind of objective and not even a salty way at all. So my opponent was able to like double Art of War me and just like do some crazy stuff, and then I actually just drew like the full non-attack action hand. So although it was close on life, it was definitely, you know, we weren't getting there. It was a bit of variance, but the deck is like, it's kind of a meme, right? So you can just variance into the full non-attack action hand, so that's fine. Ultimately, I was happy though. I got a cold for Briar. I would have loved to win the ProQuest, but you know, sometimes you don't make it.
Yeah, I mean, those sound like standard chain hands to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, double R4 standard.
Yeah, okay, so you're playing the ProQuest, having a fun day, and then I guess that's kind of Cincinnati for you, right? I'm sure you went out for dinner with some of the team and then called it a weekend.
Yeah, they have casinos in Cincinnati, so we actually ended up going to the casino. But I took an early night. Anyway, that weekend, unfortunately, I was actually quite ill, not with like a COVID or anything like that, but I just have this kind of reoccurring health issue, and unfortunately, I had like a bout of it during that time. And I was like, I remember distinctly during my ProQuest like top 8, I was having like cold sweats. I think I was not doing well, so I took an early night on that Sunday.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you're feeling better now. And I was going to ask as well. So they don't have casinos in other states in the US?
No, it's actually mostly illegal. Usually, it's on like land that is owned by the Native American people, or like Vegas. I don't know if that counts, but like Cincinnati just kind of randomly has a casino. So
interesting.
It's like very bizarre. Maybe that's more normalized now, that in other states, but they definitely don't have it in Texas. But yeah, from what I understand, like most states, like casinos are illegal.
I just assumed, like, growing up in New Zealand and living in Australia, like every major city has at least one casino. So I just assumed that, like, even like growing up in Christchurch, which is like
bizarre law.
Yeah. I just haven't. I guess I've never really thought about it. I've just always taken that they're there. I'm not personally a frequenter. I don't mind a punt on the sports, but less so on the cards, as it were. Interesting. Good to know.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
Not so popular in the US.
All right. Well, that's a bit of a wrap on Cincinnati. Obviously, nice run, top 8, ProQuest. Not quite for the day 2. I know Dante did make day 2, but then I think he lost his second round or first round of his draft. He needed to 3-0 the pod because he came in at X2. So Dante missing. I think he finished like 39th. Needed the top 32 for the day 2 for the last draft. So he made the first cut to 64, but not to the 32. So just shy there for Dante.
Yeah, and in the ProQuest, I think he lost round 3 or 4. So unfortunately, our secret spicy Dash deck list will stay hidden.
I was going to ask, what was he playing? He's playing Dash.
He's playing Dash, yeah.
Cool.
I mean, Dante's definitely a comfort player for sure.
All right, let's move on. So we're now, this weekend actually is the first Nationals. So this is National season starting as of this weekend. UK Nationals are this weekend. And that kicks off the national season. Originally, that was meant to be the New Zealand Nationals, which I think was meant to happen this weekend or last weekend. Was meant to be, I guess, the first event. So now we're looking at, I guess, a national season that starts now, effectively, with US Nationals the weekend after. Obviously, you'll be there, Brendan. And then I think we move through. We've got a few like European Nationals. I think Canadian Nationals are in the end of November. And then we wrap up, I think the last week in November or the first week of December is when Nationals wraps up. So it's basically a 4-week national season. I think there's a few that aren't scheduled yet. So for instance, for myself here in Australia, we haven't got a confirmed date for our Nationals. I know LSS have committed to it. They've said that they will allow the TO to run the nationals even as late as January, Feb, because I think that's actually the official end of the season. They've extended it, so there is an opportunity for that. So I'm fingers crossed that we're going to play nationals. Things are going pretty well over the side of the world now. But yeah, so why don't we talk a bit about...
Can we back up, sir?
Okay.
Excuse me. You said I will be at U.S. Nationals. Do you know who else will be at U.S. Nationals?
No? Who else will be at US Nationals?
Yeah, Mr. Hayden Dale is flying all the way over from the land down under, and he's going to be in Orlando.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I do not think his hair will be white, but he is a handsome man standing at around 6'2", I believe, so he should be easy to spot.
Well, I thought we were going to save that for the end of the show. No, yeah. So I will be in Orlando. Literally, as we're recording, just confirming all the details. Very fortunate. I think my plan was always to try and get to a calling overseas this year. Like circumstances have kind of prevented that, and international travel's been really difficult. Here in Australia, borders are opening as of next week. And so it presents me an opportunity to come along and play in Orlando, which is super exciting. Just got to now jam in some testing and have a deck. But yeah, excited to be there. Get to meet Brendan for the first time. Using him as a leaning post all weekend. And then yeah, I mean, in terms of if you are at the calling, come up and say hi. I'm excited to meet our Arsenal Pass listeners and anyone, actually, just anyone and everyone. So I don't really have distinguishable features right now like white hair, but I don't know. I'm taller than Brendan. Does that help?
So are a lot of people if I stand at 5'3",
But yeah, come and say hello. I'm really excited. I'm flying. Literally, I'm booking this at the moment and flying out in the space of a few days, which is like a crazy experience right now, just given the fact that I haven't traveled internationally. Well, actually, that's not true. I traveled to New Zealand earlier this year to see family and friends and go back for the calling. So yeah, I have traveled internationally, but this is like a different beast. I think it's such a weird period of time, and there's a little bit of anxiety I think from my end, but I'm also just super excited to be there, and just made the decision that it's time to get over that way. And no thanks to Brendan helping and supporting that as well. No, genuinely.
Yeah, no, legitimately peer pressuring the living, out of you. I mean, I obviously I want Hayden to come over, but yeah, I think it's incredible that he's able to make nationals and make the final event of 2021. It's just so awesome and epic in so many ways. And there's a calling on that weekend too. I don't like to be that guy, but I would like to see the Matt Rogers versus Hayden Dale feature match in America, throwdown. I'm not a big, kind of big fanboy, but that would be sick. And I know that everybody else would be super behind that. So that would be a legendary match, I think.
I think the only time we've played in a flesh and blood match in person, me and Matt, was our calling finals. So I'm sure Matt wants revenge. So yeah, it would be a cool showdown. But yeah, obviously I'll be playing in the calling. So yeah, looking forward to it. With that said, Brendan, all the excitement aside, should we get into talking about some Classic Constructed?
Yeah, let's get into the numbers first. So we got the Dallas ProQuest and we got the Cincinnati ProQuest, and I was very surprised at Cincinnati. That meta did not look like what I expected to, especially in the context of Dallas being the weekend before, and we saw some things succeed, some things not. But Cincinnati, what showed up was surprising. Yeah,
so I've got some numbers here. So thanks to Flesh and Blood, to the Fab TCG website, LSS, they actually put up the metagame breakdown. I think Channel Fireball provided that. So that's actually really cool. Obviously, they've gone through the deck list and just looked at who was playing what and got a bit of a breakdown, which is, at first I looked at it and thought, oh, this isn't right. And then I looked at it and thought, oh no, this is right. So I thought maybe what I'd do first, because you talked about Dallas into Cincinnati, and this has been a short season of Classic Constructor so far. Since Tails, we've had 2 ProQuests, and that's kind of the only thing we really have to go off, other than, things that people say, things that are heard and whatnot. So if we start with Dallas, what happened in Dallas? So we had, coming into the top 8, we had a Katsu, we had 2 Bravos in the top 8, we had 2 Boltons, we had a Lexi, we had a Prism, we had a Dash. So that was our... I say Katsu? I did, yep. So that was our top 8. Of course, ultimately, Prism ends up taking it out. And I think it was a Prism versus Bravo final. Yeah, so... Correct. Yeah, so that was obviously the final. Those 2 decks, I think everyone had sort of said, were probably the decks to beat, right? They were coming across from the last meta. Prism obviously won the Calling. Bravo was pretty well represented through Road to National season and also into the Calling Vegas. And people also thought that just pretty reasonably positioned against a lot of the newer heroes coming to the format. Chain dipping out was a good thing for Bravo, etc., etc. So kind of no surprises there. Any surprises for you, I guess, in that Dallas top 8 to Bolton?
Yeah, that was surprising to Bolton. Bolton is actually an interesting spot, arguably a better spot. Not in the context of like Ice Heroes, right? But there just aren't a lot of people playing Ice Heroes. So if you take out Chain, so it's weird because this is slightly controversial. That people think that Bolton was made to beat Chain in the Road to National season. I strongly believe that Chain was one of Bolton's hardest matchups. So a Chain out kind of fading out of the meta, I think that Bolton's in a very good spot. Probably has a harder time versus like a plethora of Bravos, but yeah, I mean if the Ice Lexis and things like that aren't represented, I'm sure Bolton Sabres is down the cheese some more events.
Do you know what? Like, as someone who's played like a little bit of Bolton, not heaps, I don't mind that Bravo matchup. I think there's definitely ways, and you can actually we played a game on camera, which I think on the YouTube channel, which I think is pretty representative of how that game can go a lot of the time.
For sure, it's just like you have to hang up the sabers and play like a gentleman. Right?
Of course, you have to.
That's like,
yeah, it's a Raiden build. I think if you were dedicated to playing sabers, which I think both these builds both had Raiden and sabers, so they could do it.
Usually hybrid at this time.
Yeah. So yeah, not overly surprising, but maybe surprising to see 2 copies in the top 8 and one make the semifinals. And then what else do we have in here? So we had 2 Bravo. I think that makes sense. We had the Prism. With Dash, we were still expecting to see Dash around. That's not really a surprise. We saw a Lexi deck make the top 8 there and a Katsu deck. So otherwise, pretty reasonable, right? Like what you might expect of a first kind of top 8 out, first outing for Tales of Aria.
100%. It looks like, I mean, it really looked like what we would have expected. It's just, I got to do a hot take here. And it's not even hot because I think it's pretty universally tested and understood is that Rampart does not like hose Dash whatsoever. And that's why you're seeing Dash still around, even while Bravo is still very popular. Mm-hmm. It really looked like Rampart was going to, put Dash in the retirement seat until the supplemental set. But yeah, definitely not. It's an upgrade. Don't get me wrong. It's an upgrade for Bravo. But yeah, it does not totally hose the mech matchup at all.
Not a hoser, doth it make, indeed. No. So Dallas wraps up. Everyone's got a week between Dallas and Cincinnati, right? So my kind of thoughts, and I just want to, we're talking this through, I guess, as the season's progressed, because we're about to head into the national season. We're going to talk about some thoughts about how the national season might progress because Tales of Aria is here. So a week between Cincinnati. My sort of thought was, meta's not going to change too much. People have a week. They're probably jamming some games if they have time. They're probably playing a bit of Sealed. But if people are going to Dallas and Cincinnati, they're probably not changing the decks too much. If people are only going to Cincinnati, they might have already had their decks locked in by the time Dallas came around. Maybe they're making some last-minute tweaks, or maybe a few people are audibling if they have cards available. So yeah, I personally wasn't expecting much difference. What did you think, Brendan?
I expected there to be not much difference, but there turned out that there was quite a bit of a difference, which is what's fascinating. So like you said, people might have been able to jam a few games, but I think most people were probably jamming a few drafts leading up to Cincinnati. Like that was how we kind of occupied our week.
Yeah, I think probably depended on like your situation, right? If people had drafts available to them or what it might have been. But if we look at the meta, so we actually have a metagame breakdown from Cincinnati of the 127 players, I think it is, that played in the ProQuest. Does that sound right to you, Brendan? 127?
I thought it was 179, but I could be wrong.
Okay, well, we have percentages, so it doesn't matter. 127 or 179. Brendan was there, so I don't know, he probably didn't do a head count, but we look at percentages. So the most represented deck in the Swiss of Cincinnati was Bravo. So Bravo was 17% of the field. Not really a surprise there. Came off the back of a second place. People, Guardian's been around for a while. It's really picked up traction probably over the last Road to National season. Players getting into it with Monarch, and then of course now Tales of Aria. You got Terra Sunder as a new toy. Rampart if that's your flavor. So Bravo has definitely been a hero that people wanted to pick up. So not really surprised at 17%. But the surprising thing for me, I guess, coming out of a chain meta was that the most played deck was 17% of the meta, less than a fifth of the meta. Like it's a big departure from events that had 30% of a single deck, right?
I mean, Yeah, like another kind of opinion piece here would be that I think the meta is like wide open right now, and you can really kind of play anything. Um, it's just a super interesting time. I think that the rebalancing or banning of those key cards and chain has just allowed for a lot of creativity in the classic constructed meta.
Yeah, it's super healthy. Like that's how I see it. It's like it's just super healthy, which is awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah. So 17% Bravo, the next most played. We actually had 3 decks. So Lexi, well, 3 heroes. Sorry, Lexi, Dash, and Prism. So they were our next 3 most played, 11%. So again, very small percentage. Our top 4, I guess, heroes are making up less than, significantly less than 50%. Or sorry, just on 50%. So Prism makes sense, right? Just come off the back of winning the last Calling, won the ProQuest. It's doing Katsu's thing that Katsu did the season before, winning the ProQuest, winning a couple of events, and then being sort of the deck to beat. But Lexi and Dash as representative Prism, I definitely wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, so the Dash I could see. The Lexi, absolutely not. Where did that come from? Lexi's, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad hero or anything like that. It's awesome, but to have that large of representation, like it wasn't just one player kind of spiking the event on a list they found. I know that there was a Lexi that went undefeated. I thought there was a Lexi top 8 in Dallas that went undefeated or something like that.
Yeah, there was one in Dallas and one in Cincy, one Lexi.
Yeah. So yeah, that he went undefeated, or they went undefeated, and they were on some Lightning Lexi list. So maybe people just saw that and thought it was really cool and picked it up. But yeah, Lexi occupying a significantly larger portion of the meta than I expected.
Yeah, I mean, new hero, right? 2 element focus, so you could build it Lightning, you could build it Hybrid, you could build it Ice. So definitely, actually, I think it makes sense, and it feels like the hero that is probably the easiest to maybe figure out initially in this new format, more so than Old Time and Briar. People have had issues with Old Time and actually matches on time, and Briar I think has been maybe less looked at, or it was kind of seen as maybe the weaker of the 3. But Lexi, it feels like there's been some attention, and then we saw a really cool Death Dealer build is what top added in Cincy. So yeah, a little bit of a surprise, but if it was any of the 3 heroes from the new set, I think it would be Lexi, right? So they're obviously Dash, just an ever-present. Sounds like there's a lot of players in North America who, played Dash a lot, favor that deck, and would, prefer to stick to it in events like this. And of course, Prism, as we said, just makes sense coming off the back of its season so far that Prism would show up in those numbers. Let's talk about next. So that's, I guess, our top 4. And then we move down, and then we have Katsu. So Katsu is, I guess, our 5th place in terms of representation in the Swiss meta. And I think, again, split between aggressive decks and more mid-range decks, but it looked like the aggressive decks were kind of doing the job over the 2 weeks in Dallas and Cincinnati.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think aggro Katsu is where you want to be. I think you said that you thought that control Katsu or this like bad mid-range Katsu would be prevalent in the early Tales of Aria meta, but yeah, I mean, aggro Katsu is definitely where you want to be, or at least like an efficient mid-range Katsu, not this like kind of control S Katsu that just is all over the place, in my opinion.
I'll clarify my statement for the docket. I said
it's okay.
I said that I thought heading into week 1 of an event, people would play Katsu, mid-range. It's really mid-range. It's not even control. Katsu mid-range, and that I probably
it's the bad mid-range version.
Yeah, like
right?
the more the like the attrition-based version, I guess. And I wouldn't blame people for doing it into an unknown meta, but I think the deck list, for instance, that top added Cincinnati was like kind of a weird hybrid sort of version. Obviously, like I'm guessing the player had sort of found the numbers that they wanted to make work. They were still focused on the surging strike line, but they had some defense reactions. They had like some exude confidence in there. So yeah, but interesting list. They still had snag in their list, so maybe they know something that we don't.
Wait, this is the one in top 8 at Cincinnati?
Yeah.
Yeah, I played them in the.
Oh yeah, you guys played in the quarters, right. Yeah,
it seemed like a very aggressive list.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it looks like probably the main 60 is pretty aggressive with some sideboard options. So yeah. So we got Katsu. Not a surprise, right? There's 2 flavors to Katsu. We saw Katsu. Katsu was at one point the most played deck in the international season in the early weeks, and was had a really good first week. Dropped off, but not surprising to see Katsu still floating around.
Yeah, I mean that's the story of it won the ProQuest, so people just net decked it.
Yeah. So I want to talk about, I guess, some of the. I've got the top 8 numbers here as well. I want to talk about these decks further. But I think what we're going to do next, we're going to talk about these top 8s, and then we're going to talk about the decks moving forward. Our thoughts on how these might pan out through the season, what we're expecting to see, I guess, UK Nationals this week, US Nationals, where this change in meta might come from. So just want to quickly say, I guess, so that's the top 5 meta showing at Cincinnati. After that, you had Briar showed up, I think it was 9%. We had Reiner as well, was around 6-7%. And then you're getting 5 or 6, 7 players playing decks like Old Time. Bolton, after coming off 2 top 8s, only 5 players in Cincinnati, which is pretty interesting. Dorinthia was around there as well. So all heroes represented. I think Viserai and Kano, as per usual, the least represented. I think only a couple of players each on those 2 decks.
Surprised on the Viserai
me too.
representation.
Yeah. But I think that'll change. I think that'll definitely change. So, all right, top 8. So we already talked about what made top 8 in Dallas. So that's the metagame. Cincinnati top 8. So we end up having 1 Prism deck make top 8, 1 Katsu deck, 1 Lexi deck. I fixed myself there. 2 Prism decks, 1 Katsu, 1 Lexi, 2 Briar, a Chain, and just 1 Bravo this time after 2 Bravo in the Dallas top 8. So I guess if you looked at the metagame and then you looked at that top 8, pretty reasonable, right? Bravo was the most played deck. Maybe the surprise was that Dash didn't make an appearance in the top 8, given that it was just as prevalent in the meta as Prism and Lexi, right?
Yeah, surprised Dash didn't, kind of squeak in there somehow, but I think that they just stuck those Dash players may have got some hard pairings really early, because I played what seemed to be a pretty talented Dash player quite early in the round. Was able to squeak out a win, but it was a really tough game. It's also something to note, which we're going to get into, is that 2 Briars made the top 8, but they might as well be different heroes, because one was, those decks are night and day. One is heavy lightning, and the other one is just totally earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, and that's I was expecting to see maybe if we saw 2 Lexis. Like the Lexi decks are pretty different as well to a degree over the 2 top 8s. But I guess it's kind of the thing with these elemental heroes, is that we're very likely going to see completely different builds. And we talked about this the other week when it came to like sideboarding. When you sit down in front of a hero like a Katsu, like a Prism, traditionally it's like, okay, what kind of, are they going to be more aggressive? Are they going to be more aura based? Whatever it might be. Now you're sitting down in front of these heroes and going like, okay, what elements are they? I mean, especially against Lexi, it's like playing against a lightning deck and playing against an ice deck is very, very different.
Totally,
and they're going to attack the game in very different ways. And if you're not prepared for those, like they can actually, they can absolutely catch you off guard. So yeah, same with Briar. Not surprised to see that. Obviously, I guess you played Briar, so anything to say, I guess, on the, I'm not sure if you played against I don't think you played against the Lightning player, right? And you played against Chain in the semifinals.
Yeah, I did play against Chain in the semifinals. But I did see that Briar deck. It's really cool. So very, very aggressive. Like probably one of the most aggressive decks I've ever seen. But looks like a really cool and fun deck, and actually looks like well-rounded and thought out. My deck was more just kind of like 60 cards. Let's have fun. And yeah, it worked out, right? Like it was a fun deck to play. But I'm interested to see where we take, like where the Briar kind of design space is taken, whether it is kind of more earth focused, more lightning focused, or I haven't seen a lot of hybrid heroes, to be honest, like at all.
Yeah, so yeah, not really, right? Like I think I've seen like a little bit of Old Time. I've seen a bit of, I also have seen some Briar hybrid. I think people trying to utilize Blossoming Spellblade. I think obviously that card's powerful, as all the dual earth cards are, but definitely harder to get off. I think Old Time's probably the one that's seen the most sort of, I kind of feel it's like, if you, and I don't want to equate things to Magic too much, but if you've ever played Magic and you play like a mono black deck, or you play a mono green deck, but then you're splashing your color, and that's kind of what this is, right? You're splashing your fusion. So you play an ice fusion deck, but then in your Old Time, or sorry, you're playing an earth fusion deck in Old Time, but you're splashing your ice cards in to let you Oaken Old and things like that. So it's it's a real balancing act, and it's a real test of skill of building, and then skill of actually how you play the game out and manage your resources, because it's like we talk about with like Livia, it's another resource to manage, or with Chain it's another resource you have to manage in the form of your elemental cards, or your element cards, sorry, that are sitting in your deck. So it's a bit of a challenge. So we have the top 8s across the 2. Ends up being, if I put those together, sorry, actually take a step back, so Bravo ends up winning Cincinnati, beating Prism beating Chain in the final.
Chain in the finals.
Yeah, beating Chain in the final. So we have Prism
straight up
1 week.
fatigues him.
Yeah, that's what I understand as well. So Prism, Bravo. So the two decks that everyone was expecting to see end up taking the two ProQuest so far. Not really a surprise, right?
Yeah, not a surprise at all.
So we have...
Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead. Nothing to say.
Nothing to say. So at the end of it all, we have 3 prizes. So the top 8's across the two. Prism takes 3 spots. Bravo takes 3 spots. Lexi takes 2. Briar takes 2. Katsu and Bolton each have 2. And then we've got a lone chain and a lone dash. So I guess if you look at what didn't show up in these top 8's, just because that could be almost as telling. Again, this is a really small sample size, but it's something to start with. No Dorinthia, no Oldtime, no Livia, no Rhinar, no Viserai, no Kano. So about half the heroes represented, right? What's the representation? That's 8 heroes represented in those top 8. So, like, to be honest, that's really healthy. 8 heroes represented across 2 top 8s in a new meta, especially after seeing just the sheer dominance of chain. I mean, we were seeing top 8s in Road to Nationals where you had 2 different heroes top 8ing, 3 different heroes top 8ing, you know, like Katsu, Bravo, chain. That's it. So to see 8 different heroes across these 2 top 8s, like, you know, really exciting start to the season in my eyes.
Yeah, and I think what the more interesting data point there was the heroes that were winning, because it was like Chain was really converting on the wins back then. But yeah, it's funny. If you had told me a year ago that Dorinthia was going to get hated out of the format, I would have never believed you, because that was like the most pet decked and just like loyal class that I think has ever existed in the game. It was really interesting to see that, you know, obviously the Prism matchup is tough, like it's pretty bad. But despite that, people have actually, you know, kind of swapped off Dorinthia, because that has been a deck that has just persisted through good metas and bad metas for it for a long time. But it seems like Prism seems to finally be the silver bullet.
Yeah, and I think there's some concerns about decks like even Lexi coming into the format and what that means, and of course Oldtime. I think it's just, is it Dorinthia's time? I mean, Dorinthia had a, you know, really, I'd say, like Welcome to Wraith, Arcane Rising, even to Crucible meta, like Dorinthia was super represented. Yeah, I mean, it was like the litmus test for a lot of decks in those early formats, because yeah, you might have a deck that played well into Dash, for instance, or you might have a deck that played well into, you know, like a Guardian maybe, or whatever it might be, but it was like, okay, but like, can you beat Dorinthia? Because Dorinthia is going to show up. It's probably going to be a fifth of the meta, or there or thereabouts, and you are going to have to play it, and you're probably going to have to beat it in order to win, you know, a Road to Nationals, a Calling, a Nationals, whatever it was. So yeah, it's interesting to see that drop away, and we have new, I guess, new decks like that. I would say Prism is probably like the litmus test these days. Like, that's going to show up, and you beat Prism.
Yep.
So that, I think, segues nicely into, I guess, just some thoughts about moving through. So of course, as I said, UK Nationals this weekend, US Nationals next weekend, and we've got a slew of Nationals around the world happening. Let's talk about some, I guess, predictions, if you don't mind, Brennan. Let's talk about what we're expecting to see off the back of this metagame, off the back of the Dallas and Cincinnati ProQuest, and what that means for these Nationals events. I'll start with you. What have you got? Any predictions you want to throw out?
It's hard to say, because the UK is an interesting little region. I don't know what they're playing nowadays. It is, I mean, relatively. It's no, that's just what do you call a way of speaking, per se. But yeah, I mean, they don't have like the most unique identity in terms of a meta, where if like you looked at something like Singapore, it is very, very unique, and they definitely have like a core identity with the way they build decks and the heroes that they play. So the UK, I expect to go pretty normal. I don't expect to see much Briar over there, and I don't expect to see much Lexi. I think there will be a lot of callback to the older heroes, especially things like Prism, Bolton. I think these light heroes are a lot more popular over in United Kingdom. What about you?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I'm thinking about right now is the way that, and I think Brennan's probably the same, like the way that I'm approaching this and thinking about this is the way that we've thought about what's probably going to be there when we've thought about the metagame in terms of choosing, you know, deck selection for the next weekend. So like I guess the thing that comes to mind is it's always been like Prism and Bravo are going to be ever present. I don't think those decks are going anywhere, right? Like, I think that's a pretty safe prediction that you can make. If you talk about UK, I think that's probably going to be the same. If I was to name one thing from my understanding of the UK, is that there is a few Dorinthia players there. Like, Dorinthia is pretty well liked in the UK meta.
Yes, I was going to say that as well.
Yeah. So that's probably the thing I would expect to see. If I talk more broadly about heading into like the first 2 nationals, so UK and then US nationals, I think we're going to see a slight shift from what we saw in Cincinnati and Dallas, but I don't think we're going to see a revolution. So I think Prism Bravo, they're going to be there. I think we're going to see Dash still competing. Didn't have the best conversion rate, I guess. Obviously, no top 8 in Cincinnati. I think now what we're seeing is like the deck that's probably going to come up and see some players, Lexi. Like we're going to see some players on these Lexi decks. It looks like people have been tuning these and working on these. So I'm not surprised to see that. I guess like one in Cincinnati that was, pretty lowly represented was Chain with just 4% of the meta.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that too because it's important because I've looked at these chains lists. I played against 3 chains in that meta. Like these chain lists, they are really not equipped to deck stack into a fatigue endgame. Like I don't know how they're getting past the prisms. Like they have a potential to roll very well off the banishes and output a ridiculous amount of damage. But in terms of like the delta on whatever they're drawing and their average output and dragging them into an endgame, especially one that consists of like Arclight Sentinels, I just don't see these lists getting past that if they face them consistently. So I think if you're playing Chain, obviously you can't crack that code, but it's a hard one to crack when you can't build. Like it's almost impossible to build Ursers. You don't have seeds. So I was surprised at kind of the low representation of Prism, but if we see a high representation of Prism, like Prism is genuinely a pretty tough matchup for those chain lists that we saw in Cincinnati. So yeah, definitely surprised to see the list that got to top 8 got that far, especially in the context of how many Prisms were in that field.
Yeah, and Bravo.
And Bravo, right?
Yeah.
You saw the finals, like it was just a straight fatigue because the list wasn't wasn't equipped, and like usually the players that are playing those lists aren't very practiced in like deck stacking end games, right? But it's very hard nowadays. Like how do you build Ursa? How do you dodge and how do you like kind of play out your cards so you can effectively dodge Arclight Sentinels and not overcommit? It's like 10 times harder than it used to be.
Yeah, and I mean, Stuart, who won the event with Bravo, wasn't playing Snags. Might have been playing Sigil of Souls, I guess, like the life game package, but not playing Snags. So wasn't prepared for an end game if Chain did that. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's funny. You played 3 Chain. There was only 5 at the event, so you played over half the chains that were at the event, which is pretty funny. But I think we'll see Chain rise a bit. I think it took a really massive, hit, obviously early on. I guess bandied around by none other than Brennan Patrick and Dante Delfico themselves as the hero's been banned. I don't think that's quite true. I think the hero is still playable.
It's hyperbole. I was joking.
Okay. Just back out of it now.
Listen, I'll tell you right now. If you want to be Chain, you play Bravo, you play Prism, and you just fatigue it. You like put those lists to the test and see if they can, roll you by either getting lucky or if they can deck stack you into an end game, which is already hard enough. But you have to be an extremely talented player to do that with the tools that are currently available. So like that is the tip. If you want to beat Chain, there are plenty of tools out there to do it right now.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think that was the one I would have gone for last season, but now currently.
I couldn't have said it enough last season that you literally can't fatigue Chain. Like it's impossible. Like yeah, you can fatigue chains that are playing like 10% blood debt, but if you tried to like the list that were teched for it, you had like a less than 1% chance to win. But now I'm telling you right now, just fatigue it. Like the list is not built for the end game, especially if you have Arclights. Like it's just if you Arclight them at the wrong time, like I can't even imagine how bad it is.
He's a passionate man. Yeah, so I guess the only other take I had was that I probably expect to still see some Chain. The deck's still powerful; you can still do powerful things. But I think it's
for
probably
sure. Art of War still exists, right?
Yeah, Prism and Bravo really going to tie that down. I think, and even to an extent, decks like Dash. So. Which have been 3 of the most popular decks in the format so far, and I don't expect those to change. So it's going to be a tough time for the Shadow Runeblade, I think. I guess if
really
we look
excited for someone to win Nationals with Chain, and the first thing they're going to say is, "Well, Arsenal passed it."
You're going to get the old classic Tyler shout out.
Yeah. I guess Hayden, I rudely interrupted you.
Yeah, you did. No. It's perfect. I think the next thing I was going to say is, so we have a bit of an idea of what we think happens 2 weeks out, right? We feel that this metagame from Dallas and Cincinnati, we see a slight move on, but nothing revolutionized. There will be players who have been holding decks back and have been testing, and there will be a few things that come out of the woodwork, I guess, that people aren't quite expecting, look a bit different, but those are going to be really small percentages, right? I think for the most part, players are going to play what they're comfortable with, what they've been testing and playing into events like the ProQuest, They've been tuning these decks, and that's what they're going to run into. Especially, if you're struggling for a deck right now, I think people are just going to pick up Bravo and be pretty comfortable with that because it just has pretty solid matchups across the board right now. Same with Prism to a degree. So I think those are going to still be most to play decks because of those reasons. But you'll see a few things change. I think. Any thoughts, I guess, as we move past the first 2 weeks, Brennan? Like, could the US and UK nationals, predominantly probably the US nationals, really warp massively what we see, say, the week after in Europe, or 2 weeks later in Canada, or 3 weeks later in Canada? Sorry.
The UK nationals, and like, I don't mean this within your disrespect, I don't think so much unless there's a new deck. If they come out with a new deck and it wins, yes, it will warp the meta. But if like Prism wins or Bravo wins, it's the same. I think it literally changes nothing as we head into US nationals. The decks that top 8 and win US nationals, a significantly larger event. And even that calling that weekend. So if we take like the aggregate events, take both events, the decks that come out of that weekend are going to, in my opinion, heavily warp the nationals that are coming after it. Because it's going to be, you're either going to have fantastic lists to net deck that have been tuned and that are just very ready to play, or you're going to be able to look at the meta and look at and just predict it very well and attack it very well. I don't think the same thing off of just the UK. I think that like UK nationals in terms of impact will be pretty equal to like the ProQuest and stuff like that. Like the ProQuest are larger events than the UK nationals. Not that that's the most relevant data point. I just, unless there's like a new hero or something spicy winning in the United Kingdom, I don't expect it to have too much impact. Like it would just be par for the course if like a Prism or a Bravo won. But yeah, that Orlando weekend should in my opinion, set the precedent for the future national championship tournaments that happen after it.
Yeah, it makes sense. You've got 2 massive events. I think US Nationals is what? It's like a couple hundred players, right? And same with, I guess, the calling.
Couple hundred? I thought it was like 600.
Is it? I don't know. But then the cut, right? So you get the cut today too, and then players who don't make the cut in US Nationals still get the opportunity to play Orlando as well. So plus you've got, other players playing in that event, Canadians, players that didn't qualify for Nationals, etc.
Australians.
Yeah. Wow. Is there an Australian playing? I haven't heard about that. I've heard a couple of New Zealanders are playing.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then, so I think you're right. I think that's going to set the tone, set the precedent. I think if, to your point though, like if it's sort of status quo and nothing really changes, we get the ProQuest sort of meta, it's really open field. You see pretty diverse top cut, top 8. It feels like it's pretty open. There's like some really well-tuned decks, but the meta is still pretty diverse. I think you'll see the same thing. You'll see these lists adopted. You'll see these tuned lists start to be adopted, but the meta will stay pretty open, and that's an exciting prospect. There's obviously the possibility that 1 or 2 decks just really prevail. The strength shines through of some of these decks that maybe people have been working on, or there's just a piece of the meta we're not seeing right now where a few decks might be stronger than they appear, things like that. So I think we'll definitely see that, and then that'll take through into the final 2-3 weeks of the national season. You might not see it immediately the week after because there's a bit of a lag, I guess, in terms of people might already lock in decks for nationals the weekend after, but the nationals the 2 weeks after or 3 weeks after, yeah, definitely. I think you're going to see some pretty big impacts there.
Yeah, currently the meta is extremely healthy, but I don't think we've had that big event that would force players to really push it. Put to like, I'm going to play my best deck. I'm going to test this a lot. So we'll see.
Yeah, we haven't had the true test yet.
100% agree.
All right. Well, with that all said, I think that kind of wraps up the main topic of the pod. Brendan, anything you want us to say on Classic Constructor before we move on? I think we've talked about where we are right now, the meta, some sort of key callouts, our predictions for heading forward. I guess if you're looking for a deck, I mean, you can look no further than, I guess, the metagame right now. It seems like Bravo and Prism are 2 of the safest picks right now.
Yeah, I would say there's an interesting dichotomy there because Bravo had traditionally has a pretty hard time into or Prism. But I would say in this meta more than any other meta that I've seen, maybe it seems like you can really play what you want. Meta's open, it's healthy, and I think that you don't really, it's not like you have to play Chain or have to play something that like beats Chain or something like that, which is where we were in Monarch. So
yeah,
good place to be. Play what you want, play what you're comfortable with, in my opinion. And yeah, good luck in your national events or calling Orlando, whatever and the next thing on the horizon is for you. But closing out here, I do want to shout out our YouTube channel. Like I said, we did have that Bravo Viscera gameplay go up. It's one of my favorites. I left a spicy little. I actually leaked one of the cards from the supplementary set accidentally on the video. Big sorry to Legend Story Studios on that. Check it out to see what it is. So yeah, like I said, with the Viscera deck, we are doing the deck tech that will go up there. If you want to, get all the extra content that is behind that deck tech, the deck theory, sideboard guide, ratios, spreadsheets, everything you need, pick it up, be competitive. It's going to be on the Arsenal Pass Patreon. The Patreon also has exclusive podcasts every single month, as well as live sessions. Check it out. Almost 300 patrons already, and that is patreon.com/ArsenalPass. Hayden and I are both on Twitter. I'm located at Brendan APG, and Hayden is located at Fyendale, FYEN_Dale. Follow us there. We love engaging with all of you on Twitter. And yeah, I think that pretty much closes it out for us. Good luck. I'm so excited. I mean, not good luck, but I'm so excited to have Hayden come over to the great United States and the beautiful state of Florida. And I think we're going to have a fantastic time. Be sure, if you do see Hayden in Orlando, hopefully, if you can't find him, he's probably going to be standing by me. So just look for the white hair, come up, say hi, make him feel loved over here in the US. But yeah, until then, we'll see you in the next episode.
See you later.